I wanted an opportunity to talk about my own question about the importance of education and this idea of a vision of the future and a 10-year plan and a 5-year plan and some of the ideas that I have thought. And I'm just going to throw them out there as I have time and I can talk about them. One of the big ones that kind of think is so obvious that I really don't understand why it hasn't happened, or why it's not in the works, and it very well could be in the works in some places. But the one idea that I think is being ignored is the fact that as a school, as public schools exist, there's very few opportunities for kids to take online classes, and just classes. Take for example my district, DPS. The way we approach online classes is that we have an online school, and that child enrolls in that online school, and as an online school, they take all of their classes online. It's an interesting way of approaching it. I don't necessarily think it's terribly effective. You're only dealing with a particular group of students, and in all honesty, I think this is something that would benefit all students. Now, Jeffco, a neighboring district to us, and I don't know if it's still the case because Jeffco has gone through quite a few changes in the last couple of years, had developed an online school, but the online school was in a way that allowed kids in both middle school and high school, regardless of the school that they're enrolled, to enroll in classes that were offered online. Now, I think that's brilliant. I think that's a great way of reducing the number of kids in a class. And what that really does, if you think about it, if you offer online classes, and specifically any class that's considered a core class, a graduating class, even if you go all the way back to elementary, it's kind of a little iffy, but definitely middle school and high school, where these are the classes that you need to be proficient at in order to be successful on the next level. Those core classes, if you offer them entirely as an other online option, it creates kind of an interesting situation. And what it really does, several things that it really does. One of the key things it does is it eliminates the concept of social promotion. And I'm not against the idea of social promotion. I understand the logistics of it. But think about, this is an over stereotyping situation, and I want to make sure I throw that out there. Think about a kid that continues to be moved on via social promotion. And if you're unfamiliar with the concept of social promotion, the idea is that there are really no positives to holding a kid back. A kid fails a math class in middle school, they're allowed to move on as long as a parent signs off. So the kid can fail all of their classes theoretically, and mind you, I don't have any proof that this is a major problem, but it definitely addresses, my solution addresses that component of it. That kid fails all of their classes and are continued to move on. When they reach high school, which there is no social promotion, that they have to be passing these classes in order to graduate. The kids have learned one thing over and over again over those years, is that failure is a way of success, and that you don't need to do anything in order to move on. And I think we're selling those kids short. We're telling them that it's okay to fail. We're going to move you on anyway. And I don't think that really fits in with this idea of asynchronous learning. When we talk about 21st century skills, asynchronous learning is kind of the key concept. So social promotion is definitely an anti-asynchronous learning component. So a method to eliminate it is offering these online classes. Now, what that means is that kid can still be moved on from 6th grade to 7th grade, like he normally would through pathways of social promotion, but that failing grade follows him. That failing math grade stays with him, and that kid continues to be enrolled in that class as an online class until that grade has been resolved. So instead of getting that F in that math class and then moving on to the next grade level to take yet another math class that he's obviously going to struggle with, that child instead would be then put into an online class, and then until that child passes that class, he's moved on to the next one, and to the next one, and to the next one. And now we normally don't do this in education for a couple of reasons. I mean, once that child gets behind, he never really gets an opportunity to catch up. And I understand that logic. I really do. But the flip side of that is once that child fails a core concept like some algebraic understanding of a concept, how do you plan on making them succeed? And we've developed massive programs in order to get kids caught up, where I argue that it would be simpler and probably more effective that child was employed in an online class, and then from that online class his math continues to stay online until that child gets caught up. Now, we can argue about the effectiveness of online, and by no means when I refer to an online class am I referring to the idea that the child is at home with a laptop and is left to his own devices. I imagine that if this was more of an accepted idea, that there would be rooms dedicated to students taking online classes, where you would take a large room, throw it full of cubicles, and put computer stations at all of them, and have teachers monitoring that section. Now, that can be done several ways. You can actually hire teachers as specialists, content specialists, which I think is the ideal way to do it. If you think about this interventionist movement that we're experiencing in DPS, I think it would be better served in all schools if we've identified the students that are struggling in particular areas, isolate them from the general classes, and put them in direct contact with the specialists over and over again, and make them redo the exact same content that's required for any other kid to do it in a regular classroom. So that concept, that idea of classes following you, is a wonderful way of expressing asynchronous learning in a way that no single teacher would be capable of doing. So in a sense, it would be asking the district to blend itself, that it would blend on a district level, creating opportunities for kids to learn in asynchronous methods. Now, on the flip side of that, think about the other kid, the kid that is exceptional. That kid could then, instead of taking earth science and being bored in earth science, because to be honest, most of our low-level traditional classes could be covered in 3 months, 4 months. We're just pacing it out so that kids will get a better understanding. But there are kids that could theoretically accomplish that entire curriculum in 3 or 4 months. So why not give those kids the opportunities to enroll in an online class, excel through that class, move on to the next concept? I mean, theoretically, a child who has enough mathematical skills could, in theory, be enrolled in something like AP Calculus their sophomore year. And you may think that's ridiculous, but I can think of a half dozen kids that I'm currently teaching that probably could have done that if they were given the opportunity. And as a matter of fact, I have a kid that's a senior that's going to college for math because we're not capable of teaching him. He's that far advanced. But that child would have all of their math credits in place well before graduation. So we're not struggling to count for these 3 hours here and these 5 hours here. That would all be taken care of, and then that kid continues to move on with their education. They continue to progress. So those kids are allowed to move faster. Now, the other thing that I find really interesting about this concept, making all these core calc classes available online, is the idea of a kid that doesn't want to go to college, does not want to experience higher education. That kid could, in fact, graduate early. If that kid wants to get out early and get into the workforce and doesn't have any aspirations for college, they still can achieve a high school diploma, still get all their core requirements, so if they change their mind later on in life, they can still enroll in college with a diploma not a GED, and get work experience. Now, I mean, it's argued that these kids would almost be better served not completing their last couple of years of high school in order to get into the workplace sooner, to get that workplace education faster. And I can see the value in that. But I also can see the value if I move that kid out of high school before their junior or senior year, they may not be able to go to college after that. So online schools in the core curriculum definitely gives the kid the opportunity to graduate early with a high school diploma and no stigma associated. So if that child does want to go back to college, they can. Now, on the other side of that spectrum, the college-bound student, the college-bound student could, in fact, and at my school we do have this, we have kids that are interested in the medical field. Well, they're taking all these additional classes because we like to have kids coming out of high school with basically a liberal arts degree. They have a broad horizon, so that if there's anything else they want to know about, they can. Now, the child that wants to be pre-med has the opportunity to get through all of their science classes early. Biology should not be an issue for them. But once they've gotten through those classes, let's say at the sophomore level, they have 2 years of additional sciences that they can pick up, which means that classes like AP Biology, Anatomy Physiology, AP Environmental Systems, those classes become classes that they can, in fact, enroll in without trying to make it an elective. Instead, it would be their science class for that year. They would graduate with more science credits than most people and kind of boost up their resume, their letter of rec when it comes to their transcripts, when it comes to enrolling in colleges. So I see you've passed all these classes and you've taken AP Biology and you've moved on to Anatomy and Physiology and blah, 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 and all this can go on. Oh, and you worked as an intern at a hospital for a CTE program. I mean, all of these things would be a lot more feasible in a district that has a program where the core classes are completely available online. And like I said, that online component, I don't imagine a kid at home with a laptop. I imagine space set aside in a school where this is the online one, where there are teachers that help facilitate learning at the same time that they're engaged in an online curriculum, kind of making it a flex blended classroom. Now, the one disadvantage of developing something like this comes to cost. The reason why my district has not chose to do something that, in all honesty, I think is short-sighted, is cost. Dollars by our students. So how do you run a school where a kid can enroll in one class in that school and is enrolled in 4, 5, 6 other classes in another school? That dollars follows that kid, whatever bulk program he goes to. Well, the simple solution to that is to make a commitment to it. If you commit funding to that online program, then you have pulled the money away from the kid. You're saying that there's a line item on our budget, and that line item is for online education. That's the only way this works. But the benefits on the other side are, if I have George Washington, that's 1,800 kids. If I have 400 of those kids taking online class, but let me reiterate. If I have 400 online students maybe enrolled in one class, that's 400 additional seats in the classroom. So that means that as a whole, the class size in that building reduces while their budget stays the same. The district has to figure out a way of picking up the cost, and I would argue that the cost of this program would be considerably less than those 400 kids in that classroom. I'm not providing the same types of materials. I'm not providing the infrastructure that's necessarily associated. Because honestly, I do see an online classroom, but what portion of high school seniors are going to be using that space. Not many. So there will be this funding that will be put back in the schools that way. In addition, instances of bad behavior, instances of classroom management are reduced. If you have a kid that does not like math and is struggling and is getting an F, you could move that kid into an online class. Or, more appropriately, if we have a disruptive student because they're bored in class, you can take that child and move them into an online class, removing the disruption in that class, making that class a lot more easier to manage, and in turn retain more teachers. The success rate of that teacher in that classroom improves because you remove that distraction. And people have told me, well, that's not fair. Every child has a right to an education. And the truth is I'm not denying him that right. I'm denying him the right of an audience. I'm saying you will still get your education. You will still learn the same material, but you do not have a right to an audience. And this way, that child has learned that that behavior is incorrect. And if that child wants to get back into class, they have to prove their understanding for that material and address the behavioral issues that put them in that situation. I think it's an interesting idea, and I think there's still even more benefits to talk about. Certainly ones that I really shouldn't talk about, like dropout rates. You think about it, if you're putting struggling students and disruptive students into an online class and treat it as asynchronous, then that class follows them until they're no longer in school. So you're not getting kids getting bulked up with all these Fs their 8th grade year, having no chance of graduating on time and leaving. Instead, even if they failed all their classes, those classes follow them. There's always an opportunity to recover, and that opportunity exists until they're too old to be enrolled in high school. So it's just an interesting concept that I think, like I said, needs to be addressed. It should be talked about, and I think even the cost component can be dealt with. I mean, the idea of having teachers monitoring an online room could be done as a duty. I mean, I'm required to do a duty every day, but if my duty was just tutoring kids in an online environment when they needed help, that's worthwhile. I'm not posting grades. I'm not grading anything. The online component is taken care of. I'm just helping addressing small problems at a given moment. So if you think this is a decent idea, or if you think there's something I've missed that definitely tips in the idea of a bad idea, please send me a message. Or if you have more ideas. Thank you.